as I can see by some recordings, you have been spending a lot of time in Canada working with a lot of people up here, and most recently you were up, well, just now you're heading back to New York City. What brings you up here again?
Well, I did a couple of what I call spoken word performances, one at the University of Western Ontario, and
Philip who? Who?
Oh yeah, that even made it down to the States with people claiming that it's too politically correct, and the politically correct are the new thought police for trying to criticize people like Mr. Rushton and things like that. There was even an issue that came out in Newspeak magazine called the Beware the Thought Police. And I figured, oh, maybe I can actually put down money for Newspeak again. Maybe they're finally talking about these fundamentalist ministers trying to knock Madonna videos and Public Enemy and Two Live Crew off the air and out of record stores and off radio. But oh no, the thought police are people such as African Americans, feminists, Asians, Hispanics, people who want something in these school curriculums other than white male European history, and also part of an attempt to wipe out knowledge of how successful resistance against the Vietnam War was as a way of cementing in place the New World Order. Even Patrick Buchanan, of all people, said it was now that, quote, the Reagan Revolution is complete politically in the 1980s. We have to have a cultural revolution in the 1990s to cement it in place by stamping out smut and, you know, just anti-government art, as he put it, in very similar language to Hitler when he was first rising to power in the late 20s and early 30s. You know, gay bashing, minority bashing, Jew bashing, you name it. In this newspeak, it says the thought police are this, quote, plunk down a professor from Princeton, say, at the University of Wisconsin at Madison, show him a student in a tie-dyed t-shirt with open-toed sandals and a grubby knapsack, what, no briefcase, dangling a student union issue environmentally sound reusable plastic cup, in other words, recycling is bad, and he'll recognize the type instantly. It's PC person, politically correct, in other words. They accuse the so-called politically correct of being the new McCarthyism. What it really is McCarthyism against people who don't toe the line and look the other way when people like Mr. Rushton in Western Ontario start espousing theories that were supposed to have died out with the Nazis. And we have people saying things like, I feel that an American student should know American history before he or she turns to Afro-American history or Asian American history or things like that. And it turns out the same writer who wrote this cover story presenting it as impartial news in Newspeak was also part of another part of what really is a culture war against artists and journalists who want to present a view of society different from the New World Order. Rap rage.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah,
one,
notice they use an Amos and Andy-ish shot of Tone Loc on the cover.
Yeah. Can we get a close-up of that? Just
and
right in there.
Get ready for what they have to say. Here's Public Enemy, the rap attitude. Tiny little picture of Axl Rose down here, but this is how they describe Public Enemy: as scary as sudden footsteps in the dark. Playing on what Bush did to turn his presidential campaign around and beat out Michael Dukakis, where one prisoner out of hundreds who escaped from a furlough program where when Governor Dukakis was governor of Massachusetts committed more crimes, and they showed his mugshot over and over and over again. His name was Willie Horton, and the subtle message was, if you vote for Dukakis, black people, who of course are criminals, are going to be in your neighborhood. And Bush won in a landslide. They also say this. What they're talking about here is how bad the culture of attitude is. Attitude. You're not supposed to have any attitude if you're young. You're just supposed to go to business school, shut up, and shop. Quote, attitude primarily is a working class and underclass phenomenon, a response to the diminishing expectations of the millions of American youths, imagine that, who forgot to go to business school in the 1980s. And on top of it, they mentioned Shut Up and Be Happy by Ice-T, which used a sample off of my No More Cocoon spoken word album, the text that I read earlier in my newscaster get up there. And this is how they describe Shut Up, Be Happy. Quote, if she's lucky, she gets made love to with a flashlight.
Yeah, sorry.
Real good research, and this is presented as impartial news in magazines like Newspeak, but they do offer an alternative, back-to-back with with the Thought Police issue came Young Americans Return to God. And you open it up to the table of contents. I don't know if you can get a close-up on this, but look at this prototype New American Family here that makes Donna Reed look like Gigi Allen or something.
Well, you can barely see that, but it is a family of about 4 or 5 standing at a bus stop.
Not just any bus stop, First Baptist Church. And then it says, quote, having transformed American society as they march toward middle age, the nation's 75 million baby boomers are leading a return to organized religion, even though their own statistics later on refute that. Quote, much of the revival is fueled by the boomers experiencing parenthood. They want a place for their children to acquire solid values, the same kind of solid values as Jim and Tammy Baker or Pat Robertson or other Christian supremacists of that type.
Well, are you finding, coming up to Canada, are you finding that the American attitudes are being brought over this way?
Oh, there's an active attempt to push that, actually. You'll notice the anti-abortion people have been creeping up here, and of course been, you know, more successful, I suppose, in Saskatchewan or Manitoba, where forced Christian school prayer in public schools is still an issue.
And we still have native rights, which is a big issue. Before we go on any further, let's go to one of those scary pieces of music by one of those scary artists. This is Public Enemy, Fight the Power on Much Music in Stereo. We'll be back with more from Jello.
Playback.
Is having a few problems. The track's called Fight the Power. In the studio with me is Jello Biafra.
Well, that video, I hadn't seen it before, because I hardly ever watch rock video on TV at all. But it's kind of reminded me of the night Bush started bombing and people stormed all over the streets in San Francisco, and hardly any of the newspapers admitted it even happened the next day, except focusing for a small minority who kicked in a few windows or something like that. But that's part of the culture war I'm talking about, is why are they picking on Public Enemy and trying to lump them in the same category with Two Live Crew, or using Two Live Crew as a bait to get people into the idea of picking on NWA or Public Enemy. What they're worried about is more people, you know, especially white suburban teenagers, listening to black music and thinking, wait a minute, we can fight the power too. And why not? It could even be fun.
When I was talking to Ice-T last time about his new album, he was saying that the problem is that not so much that the kids love or like the music, but they go home and they say, I like Ice-T, Mommy. He's my friend. I want to, you know, I like to dress like him, and I can listen to his music, and he talks to me. He's my friend, which is what youth culture or music of the day is all about. I mean, rock and roll, of course. Our parents parents didn't like it, but our parents did.
Ironically, the Parents Music Resource Center, run by Tipper Gore and Secretary of James Baker's wife, Susan, who is James and Susan are both hardcore fundamentalist Christians, by the way, and Susan sits on the board of Focus on the Family, the organization that helped knock out Ms. Magazine and is trying to get The Simpsons taken off the air. Anyway, they circulate a cassette that parents can order on what to do if your child is hooked on music or is suffering from rock addiction, and of course they say take away things like Ozzy Osbourne, Prince, or now their list is almost exactly a black list. Almost everybody on there is black, but they even propose as a part of parent-child communication that you can successfully wean your child of rock addiction if you substitute Phil Collins or something like that in their place, and the kids will somehow go for that. Which is almost more insulting than taking the records away and not substituting anything else. I mean, when I was in elementary school, what they tried to do was have us sing along to John Philip Sousa patriotic songs, or right after the Kent State massacre happened, we had to do an entire spring program of patriotic and military songs and things like that.
Are the parallels in rap? I always looked as rap as sort of punk or hardcore was to rock and roll, the sort of DIY factor. You did it yourself, and there's a huge tune-out factor for parents and other people who aren't with it at the time.
Well, I think in spirit, a lot of it is going after the same thing, especially if songs like Fight the Power or Fuck the Police or something like that. I mean, the Rodney King video in L.A. of the LAPD dragging that guy out of the car and beating the living daylights out of him, we saw that happen at our concerts in Los Angeles and other towns. That's standard procedure in American police departments. And I think the difference with rap is it kind of snuck around and got in the back door because white corporate America wasn't keeping an eye out for it, and all of a sudden people got hooked on it because there was a conscious decision among major labels not to sign punk and hardcore bands. I mean, who quote, "We don't want another 60s" or something like that. And then rap did the end around and got this huge audience because the independents got strong, and the people who sell, you know, the real Drek or the Mississippi Queen revival videos or something boring like that, they were thinking, oh, we can just segregate this into the black charts. And just like they did with rock and roll in the 1950s, they just figured if we can make it a racial division subculture, we won't have to worry, and all of a sudden it caught on anyway. And so that's why they're coming down so hard on it now. New Kids on the Block or Vanilla Ice or something, no problem. I mean, now they even have their own Pat Boone in Vanilla Ice, and if you recall from the 50s, radio was so segregated that you couldn't hear a Little Richard song on pop radio. You heard Pat Boone covering a Little Richard song. And ironically, some of these same baby boomer PMRC parents who want to ban rap now are the ones saying, oh, we relate to things like Tutti Frutti, All Rudy, Wop Bop a Loop Bap a Lop Bap Boom. That really meant something to me, said one of the PMRC co-founders. And all she ever heard was the Pat Boone version because her parents were keeping Little Richard off the air.
Now, what are people going to see you doing soon? What are they? I mean, there's a large project out there, a few other things. When are you going to come back musically?
Well, I'm hopping around still. I mean, one thing I discovered after Dead Kennedys broke up, not really discovered, but vowed to do, is not to just wind up on the rock and roll treadmill. I wanted to spread myself out and experiment as an artist. Even if I found out I couldn't do any other things, why not at least try? So the spoken word performances began and then mushroomed into what I do now with it as a very information-oriented entertainment, art as journalism, as the way I fight the power. I report what's on my mind, but do it in a way that people who wouldn't want to wade through the stuff I do to get the information can find out about it. And then I was asked to be in a film in Canada called Terminal City Ricochet, which I guess is showing right now on one of your cable networks. And ironically, playing the head of the secret police, you know, kind of Oliver North, William Bennett, the drug czar, and Lee Atwater, the man who ran the Willie Horton ad, all rolled into one, with Peter Breck, who won an Emmy for the big, as Nick Barkley in The Big Valley, being the mad dictator, and I was his hench creature or whatever. Anyway, so I was asked to record a couple songs for the soundtrack of that, and those went, so that was one with DOA and one with No Means No. That did so well, I figured, oh, why not do what I did on a whim with Al Jorgensen and Paul Barker of Ministry that launched the Lard Project. Was just, let's make more songs. So we did, and then those albums are finally done, and there's another one that got hatched that'll probably be finished and out by the fall that I've been working on with members of Steel Pole Bathtub, a up-and-coming grunge noise outfit from San Francisco, and Charlie Tolnay, who used to play in an Australian band, kind of their Flipper Butthole Surfers equivalent back when, called Grong Grong. Now he's in a band called King Snake Rooster, records for Amphetamine Reptile, just a completely bent guitar player. He'd never been to the United States before. I had no idea if he ever would be again, because King Snake Rooster was touring. So, okay, let's lasso Charlie, and we borrowed Steel Pole Bathtub. 3 days of rehearsal, 2 days in the studio, and we got 9 songs. It wasn't finished. We just got the bed tracks for it. Then I had to write the lyrics, which is really tough for me to do. I'm not a natural writer. I just force myself to write the stuff I do. Once Tumor Circus, that's the name of that one, is Tumor Circus. There's a single out now, album on the way, plus another spoken word album called I Blow Minds for a Living, out in about 3 weeks. So if you missed my show, you can get it that way. And after Tumor Circus, I'm going to write more songs, which may spin off into spoken word, since Bruce's diary on the Biafra No Means No album was a diary I made to build my character for the Terminal City Ricochet. We'll be even masturbating as this guy, just to see what would happen with a tape recorder on. And then I figured I should transcribe this and make it into a song. And so all these different art forms cross-pollinate after a while, just like my collage art has kind of spilled in. And in songs like The Myth is Real, Let's Eat, or Take Me Back or I'll Drown Our Dog, which is the A-side of the Tumor Circus single.
All right, we're going to get out of here, but I want to let people know the DOA project and a lot of the other stuff is available on Fringe here in Canada.
Yeah,
and,
Fringe
or coming Alternative
Tentacles, who does not put stickers on their records, does not tell their artists what to say, how loud the guitars can be, or whether or not they have to have some dumb airbrushed picture of themselves standing in a field with a flannel shirt on looking confused
or
in order to get played on college radio. Yeah, right. I mean, if you, this is supposed to inspire people to turn the TV off and get creative and do something yourself.
Well, but if they don't turn it, if they leave it on, they can see DOA. Jello, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
All right, DOA on Much Music.